Hello there, everyone. Great to have your company for another episode of Strike Me Pink, the short, sharp South Australian sports podcast named in honour of the all-time great Ken KG Cunningham and his famous catch cry, Strike Me Pink. I'm alongside the state's #1 sports presenter, Tom Wren. I'm Ben Hook. We have big opinions, local passion, and we don't waste time getting into it. Tommy Wren, how are you?
Hooky, great to be on board. Yeah, really good. It's been an amazing week of sport, so can't wait to get stuck in and have a chat about it.
Didn't have it in the rundown, but maybe a little bit of a brag for both of us, because I did suggest that the New Zealanders were a bit of a threat at the Open Championship, and you might have had 50 cents each way on the great Ryan Fox, who took it out.
Well, you were that convincing when we finished up our chat, Hooky, that I thought I'd better get on this because otherwise, you know, Hooky, you'll be filthy with me. So I was riding Ryan Fox pretty hard at 3 o'clock in the morning, Sunday night into Monday morning. I had to be at radio about an hour and a half later, but I made sure I watched it, and my goodness, what a great champion. And you compare his sportsmanship with, say, the Argentinians at the World Cup and just the way he carried himself, the way he played, Hooky. It was a great fill-up for you, and I'm glad I just got on your coattails.
So that finish, birdie par birdie on what was a very, very difficult course by the end. The wind was blowing. It was out of the right. It's out of the left, blowing to the right, which is the worst wind for a right-handed golfer. The way he played, 16, 17 got unlucky and still made par, and then that epic birdie on 18. I think there've been 27 birdies on 18 for the entire week, and if you think about 450 people, or 400, that hole had been played 450 odd times. So remarkable day. Reminded me of 86 when Jack Nicklaus came down the stretch and was birdieing everything when everyone else just couldn't handle the pressure. And that was a pretty epic Masters victory in 86 for Nicklaus. So I really felt like that had some feel about it. You've got a punting horror story, though. Why don't you just share that with us?
Well, I was lucky enough to have a few dollars on him, which was great, and he was big odds. But spare a thought, I saw a little podcast and it was Bet Nation, and look, you know, we all have our horror stories, but someone had, I think, 1,500 on him at 150 to 1. So to win $226,000 or thereabouts, decided to cash out, which you can do. A lot of people will be aware of that and gamble responsibly, Hooky, but cashed out after the second round. I think he was even par, 8 shots back. That's when he then shot the 62 to get to 8 under. Cashed out for a loss. Hooky, how do you recover? I don't think you do.
So what was it? So 150 to 1, $200. So do the maths on that. Is that about 300,000?
It's about 225, I think, thereabouts. It's absolutely outrageous. And instead he's cashed out for, say, 1,000. Oh, Hooky. Like, don't, and look, I don't want to make it a podcast about gambling stories, etc., but just don't cash out. You put the bet on for a reason. Let it ride.
Stick with it. Yeah, I mean, it is the greatest comeback in the history of major professional golf. So he's a little bit on the unlucky side as well. Some bloke coming back from T56 at the halfway point. I tell you what, another bloke who seems to come from a long way back and has won the prize, and that's Ken Hinkley, who has won the race for the Tasmania Devils Football Club coaching job. Now, Tom, I'm interested in this with you because I know you have a great personal relationship with him, as much as someone working in media can have with someone who was a senior coach in a 2-team town. But I think most of us from outside understand the qualities that Ken has, but just maybe share with us your own personal experience of Ken and what he's going to bring to that footy club.
I think it'd be great. I mean, it's been well documented, really good for stuff like communication, Hooky, and just engaging players and getting them on board. And I think for Tasmania, being that father type figure, I mean, he's going to be the face of that club for a while before they get some talent. But it was simple things, and this was no knock on Matty Primus, who I think was really heavily under-resourced when he took the job. But it's just really simple stuff. And people might be like, well, that sounds pretty straightforward. But it's amazing how it doesn't happen. And Hooky, you would know this just in business, in life. But he would sit every player down just for a 5-minute meeting on the Wednesday or Tuesday, whenever match committee was, and say, okay, Ben Hook, you're out of the side this week. I know you'll be disappointed, but the 2 things I want you to work on are tackling and your marking. If you can work on those, I can't guarantee you, but just work on that. And then you'd at least go away. You might be annoyed. You might be a bit pissed off, but you'd go, okay, tackling, marking, I'll work on that. Tom, I'm picking you this week. I just want you to, play on the right shoulder of this player every time. If you can do that, that's all I want. Don't worry about getting the footy or whatever. But that communication of just 5 minutes a week for young men is so important. And I think that's one of his greatest strengths. those relationships. Now, I know it petered out towards the end at Port, but the one thing that he had, I think, was in his 13 years at Port, they always seemed like they were fully engaged and playing behind him. So I think Tassie have probably chosen him on that basis. We need someone that can unite this group from day one and make sure they're on board because they have to hit the ground running down there.
So, I mean, you're quite a bit younger than Ken. Do you see that ability to develop a relationship with people who aren't necessarily in his demographic as like his superpower?
I think so. And I think because he is such a almost that father type figure, I think it's almost probably harder for younger coaches, particularly if they've just stepped out of the game. And that's why I admire someone like Sam Mitchell so much, because when you have been a former player and you have to divorce yourself from being the mate to, being the coach and at times the disciplinarian and, someone who has to execute some, hard rules, he's done it really well. But I think a lot have probably struggled with it. But I think Ken, because he is a bit older, I think that father type figure works. He'll need a good team around him, and he had that at Port. He had Chris Davies, he had Keith Thomas, remember, early days. David Koch was there. I think that definitely helped him. But he's got Brendan Gale, who I think is widely regarded as really strong. Hard sell, though, Hooky, though. I don't know how they're going to go getting players down there. It'll be okay getting the marquee players because they're going to be paid big dollars. But for a young man, I love Tasmania, but I'm 43 and, got a young family. I think for someone that's young that wants to go out party, tougher sell. I'll be fascinated to see how they go with this Tasmania.
Yeah, they need to. I think number one, they're going to need to get the stadium right, and they need to get it right quickly, because if you want big marquee players to come, they're not going to want to be playing in hail and sleet and snow and 20-knot winds blowing off the Derwent for much longer than 1 or 2 years. And if you can get that indoor stadium working, I think that's going to be big for them. Hey, the one I reckon, Tom, you'll be interested in this. The one person I would be approaching from here if I was Ken Hinkley is Jade Rawlings, who's the current assistant coach, does the defence at Fremantle, has coached at the AFL, was a caretaker coach back in 2009 with Richmond, has coached senior football at the Norwood Football Club and coached them to a flag. He's from Tasmania, and I just reckon he ticks every box. The succession plan between Ken Hinkley and Josh Carr seems to have worked quite okay for Port Adelaide, and I'm still a bit of a skeptic on it. But I reckon, look, Ken Hinkley's probably not going to go beyond this one contract, which is a 4-year contract starting in 2028. And I reckon Jade Rawlings will be exactly the type of person that they could succession plan transition into as Ken gets to gets towards the end of that contract. Hey, one question for you: if Chris Fagan hadn't done what he has done with Brisbane at his age, do you think Tasmania would have offered Ken this job?
It's a great point. Maybe not, but it's amazing because we sort of look at him as this older, elder statesman, Chris Fagan, in the twilight years. Yet you go to somewhere like English Premier League, you see managers well into their 70s, Hooky.
Yes, I know.
Now, perhaps it's different. They're managing fewer staff, fewer players, but the egos are probably bigger, with the money and everything that's involved and having to rotate that squad mentality. I think it's definitely helped. And I think as well, I know it didn't work this time around, Michael Voss, but I think we will see the process more often where coaches come a second time round and are given another opportunity. I think we're sort of maturing as a bit of an industry that just because you didn't get it right the first time doesn't mean that you can't be successful a second time. And that's like anything, isn't it? Like, you think probably 10, 15 years ago, you're better at what you do than what you were 10 or 15 years ago. You just learn through experience. So I think it definitely probably helped Ken. And I think as well, I totally agree with you. I think they'll go with that younger coach, a bit like John Cale to Mark Williams. Remember, there were 2 years, Kevin Sheedy, that elder statesman with a bit of a profile, to Leon Cameron. Now, people can argue whether that worked, but Cameron was pretty good, really. Gold Coast, I don't think worked, but I don't know if that's because of proximity. We could go on about this for hours, but I think they probably looked at that model. Sheedy and Cameron, Cale and Williams had thought something similar. Let's try that.
Yeah, certainly for new clubs. But even from square one, where Paul Roos handed over to Simon Goodwin and that manifested itself in a flag in 2021. We need to move on. Darcy Fogarty got 3 weeks from the match review officer. club challenged it. Absolutely the right thing to do, in my opinion. But the AFL Tribunal late yesterday or early evening handed down that it would remain as a 3-match penalty. What's your takeaways?
Rough. I mean, really difficult, because I don't think there's any doubt that he was trying to tackle him. And people say, he was going in with venom. Well, look at the tackle that Isaac Rankin executed on Isaac Heaney. That was a venomous tackle. But if he didn't do it, it's one of the best tackles I've seen this year. If he didn't do it, Heaney just breaks away like he does with 99% of other players. You have to tackle with intent. Otherwise, you're just letting guys walk out of defensive 50 or wherever. I understand, though, why it's happened, because Hooky, they are so petrified of head contact and, they're outcome driven. If Cunningham gets to his feet, we're not even talking about it, are we? But unfortunately, the one thing I would say is, I'm not saying he exaggerated it on this occasion, but I think he did slip a little bit. Now, I don't know if he did it deliberately or not. I think any player that slips purposely or ducks their head from now on, it's almost got to be an automatic free kick against. I'm sick and tired of players. They're so courageous. They want to get a free kick. So they'll lead with their head, draw the free kick, and they'll keep doing it. Until an umpire says that's holding the ball, that's your prior, players will stop it overnight. They are so much more adaptable than we think, and they're clever. They're bloody good at what they do. Got to pay that a free kick to stop them ducking the head, because otherwise someone will get seriously hurt.
The AFL tribunal system needs to have a little bit more flexibility than just to say, well, this is what happened, so therefore it's 3 weeks. And we go back to Braden Maynard a couple of weeks ago, where he's made pretty strong physical contact with an umpire as he's trying to remonstrate with a player. And it is, well, all we can do is give him a fine. So we'll give him the maximum possible fine, but that's the structure of our system. Now, I would contend, if Darcy Fogarty was warranting of a suspension there, it was manifestly less than 3 weeks, 1, maybe 2 tops. I mean, we do talk a little bit out both sides of our mouth here when we say, oh, we've got to protect the head. But at the same time, we felt like one of our own players, I think both of us have a bit of sympathy for the Adelaide Football Club. And we look at that one and say, gee, that looks a little bit unfair. But 3 weeks or none just doesn't seem right. And for Braden Maynard, it can only be a fine. That doesn't seem right either. I just feel like the tribunal is going to need to have some more flexibility going forward.
Right. And they showed it too. Sorry, just jump in. And they showed it too, Hooky, with the Billy Frampton. Now, Brodie Mychek, that was horrific. But I think they realised it was a footy act, and he didn't intend to do what he did. And they let him off. And I think that was the right call.
Yes,
As bad as the injury was, and it was horrific. I hated seeing it. That was the right call. And I think in this one, I thought maybe a week, maybe 2. Although maybe it should have, I just wasn't comfortable with 3.
Yeah, I could have maybe tolerated a week, because it was a physical tackle that did get him high. Yes, I think there was some reasons why it took him high that weren't of his own responsibility, but maybe 1 or 2 of that was. And I would have said, look, if it was a week, I could probably stomach it, but 3 does seem manifestly excessive for what the act was. Hey, very quickly, Adelaide Collingwood on Thursday night. I mean, are Adelaide already, have they ticked the credibility box, or is this the next test?
It's another big test. That was a huge win against City. For me, their best win of the season. I think Geelong one was almost the most important. It felt like they just had to find a way, and they did by a point at home. But it's the first time in a while, Wookie, I reckon the Crows have won a game away I didn't expect them to, or anyone expected them to. Huge credit points. I don't think they fully get credit until they win a final, and we've spoken about that. They can't do it until they get there. But they're going to be there now. Now it's the position they finish in. They've got to be aiming top 4, and it's brutally hard because Brisbane and Hawthorn have got very soft runs who are 3rd and 4th. They have to beat Collingwood, and it's the first game back since Isaac Rankin, the infamous game that he had against them, remember, and the what was said, and he got a 4-week suspension. There'll be some serious spice in this. Crows have got to show some maturity again. They've got to keep backing up. If they're going to win the flag, Hooky, if they want to be serious, they just win this game. They've got to win it this week.
Port Adelaide, Brisbane, do you give Port any hope, or are they going to do what you have sort of suggested they should do and what they did perfectly against Fremantle, which was play a really good, strong game and then lose by a couple of goals?
Yeah, and that was a great performance. Again, I know people will be saying, you're kidding, aren't you? They lost. But they led the ladder leaders at halftime by 12 points, and they got done. Compare them to Richmond, who I think just turned their toes up from the start. They were woeful. and Port are more decimated, in my opinion, than Richmond with their 4 best players out. So I think this week, I just wonder, okay, I feel like they're just gripping on Port, and I tip my cap to them. Brisbane, though, percentage could be really important for top 4. I think this one could get ugly. I hope I'm wrong because Josh Carr's defied me all season with what they've been able to do with his players. But I reckon this will be a tough one this week.
Tom, I reckon you might have your phone in front of you. I'll get you just to get up the AFL ladder because I've got a couple of quick questions for you about the AFL ladder. So if you can just start to think about getting the AFL ladder up and about, and I've just got a couple of questions for you here. So currently the top 4 is Fremantle, Sydney, Hawthorn, Brisbane. Can you see any team, probably the obvious ones are Adelaide and Melbourne, making their way into that, and therefore who would come out?
I think Sydney may be a little bit vulnerable the way they're playing, but they'd have to drop a game or two that we don't expect them to. And the other thing they've got, Hooky, is strong percentage. That's going to make them hard to displace. They've got, if they dropped GWS this week, I reckon they're vulnerable. The team that I think it's maybe Hawthorn, but the Crows will need, I think the Crows might have to win all 5 to make it. 4 out of 5 might not be enough. The one thing they've got is Brisbane play Hawthorn in a few weeks' time. Yes. So one of them has to lose. I think if it's Hawthorn, they're potentially vulnerable because then they've got Collingwood in the run home as well. I think Adelaide will probably lose 3-0, should win their other 4. If a team's going to go in, I think it's Adelaide. I don't think Melbourne will. They've got a few 50-50s, Melbourne. I've admired everything they've done. But I think if their side drops out, it'll be Hawthorn. I think Brisbane win that game against Hawthorn. And I think Adelaide go in, but they might need a favour from a side like Collingwood on the way home just to displace them. Or Adelaide might have to beat Fremantle in Perth as well, which would be one hell of an effort in a few weeks' time.
5 and 6 look pretty settled to me. The Bulldogs are in 7th, a game out, but also a heap of percentage. So I find it hard to believe they're going to jump up into 6. But 7, 8 and 9 all look like they're going to play in that play-in week in the wildcard round. St Kilda are currently in 10th. Do you think they'll hold it, or can GWS or Carlton or even North Melbourne pinch it from them? They're all on the same wins.
I think North are in trouble. They've got a pretty tricky run home. GWS can. Their best is amazing, Hooky, but then they lose to Essendon on the weekend. Yep. Like the difference between their best games and their worst this season. I mean, remember the game against Brisbane? They kicked a record number of goals in the third term, was it?
Yeah.
They looked irresistible. And then on the weekend, you don't know where the spark's coming from. So they're really tricky. On their day, they're great. I think St Kilda need to make it just for what they did in the off-season. They have to squeeze in there somehow. Got to be hard. I think the wild card's been great. Just this race, it keeps at least some conversations alive. So I've really enjoyed it. But I know a lot have knocked it, but I think it's been fantastic.
Looks like pretty busy in the Nine newsroom back there. Someone pulling funny faces behind you, mate. Hey, real quick, one question. Justin Langer, is he the right guy to coach England?
I think they probably need some discipline, some shaping up and sharpening up. And you know him better than I do, Hooky. I don't mind it. He's a tough man. Yeah. He won't accept anything less than 100% and dedication. He'll be rigid. But we spoke about recycled coaches or second-time coaches. I think he'll be a bit better a second time around. Now, I'm not saying he wasn't good. He was great, but clearly there was a bit of a player and Justin Langer butting of heads. Would you say, Hooky? Just young culture, young players, and versus, that old school mentality. So he might soften a little bit, but I think he'll bring a hard edge, and I think that could be a really good thing for England cricket.
I almost want to see it because I reckon it would be pretty incredible, the spice the next time. The Ashes series, of course, the middle of next year. So that would be one thing that would just make the Ashes series, having Justin Langer, who already has a difficult relationship with the current Australian team. Wouldn't that just really make it spicy? Hookies, local sport minute to wrap us up. Just want to talk about Simon Webb. He plays in the Western Air League for Wirrallah. It's a 16 competition right out on the other side of the Eyre Peninsula. So, very, very remote footy competition. They only play about 14, 15 games a year. He just broke the club record for Wirrallah with his 422nd game. He goes ahead of Craig Johnson. He's kicked 701 goals for his career for the Bombers as well. So 422 games of football out there. I guess there's not much else to do, Tom.
You play footy and work. And I love that. Great one, Hooky.
Always good, mate. Love chatting to you. We'll do it again next week.
Love you, Hooky. See you then.
See you, mate.